right, so welcome everyone. Welcome to St. Louis County Library's virtual program, Wonderful Winter Reads. We're so happy to have you joining us tonight on this sort of drizzly, foggy evening, and we hope that all of our reading suggestions will warm you up. So I am Sarah. I'm an adult services librarian here at St. Louis County Library that specializes in readers advisory, which is like matchmaking with books and readers. So we're really happy to have you here tonight. Before we get started, I do have some, quick housekeeping things to take care of about Zoom, especially in case this is your first virtual program with us. So tonight's program is in a webinar format, which means that your camera and microphone are not active, so no one can see or hear you, although you should be able to hear and see us. So if you can't hear us, be sure to turn up the volume on your device, or if you're having connectivity issues, leave the webinar, get a little bit closer to your router and rejoin, and we find that usually helps out a lot. You can, though, ask us questions or make comments using the chat function. That looks like a little bubble that says the word chat under it in your Zoom icon bar. And we will have time for questions at the end. So you can enter your questions anytime you like, but we will be handling them at the end of the presentation as time allows. All right, so tonight's presenters are myself. Like I said, my name is Sarah. I work in the Adult Services Department. I'm joined by Harry, who also works in Adult Services Readers Advisory, as well as Helena from the Parkview branch and Jessica from the Merrimack Valley branch. So I especially appreciate Helena and Jessica joining us today from the branches. The titles that we're going to talk about are available in various formats, including print and e-media, so you can find them in our catalog. If you registered before about 1 o'clock this afternoon, you may have received an email from me this afternoon that had a handout attached to it, so you can use that PDF to follow along with us at home. And the covers on that handout are clickable. They will take you to our library catalog to place holds. If you didn't get the handout, no worries. We are recording this presentation, and then when the recording is available on our YouTube channel, I will be sending out a follow-up email, and that email will have the handout attached to it as well. So yeah, lots of ways that you can get the books we're talking about tonight. So I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. So for me, like if the typical summer book is like a beach read, meaning like something that is light and fast and straightforward, then for me, a winter book is like something that's more layered and immersive and thought-provoking. So that's what all of my picks are tonight. So my first pick is The Secret Book of Flora Lee by Patty Callahan Henry. And this book has several different sort of intertwined storylines that cross genres and time periods. So in 1939, 14-year-old Hazel and her little sister Flora, like many London kids, they're evacuated to the Oxfordshire countryside for their safety. And the two of them get lucky and they're placed with free-spirited Bridie and her kind artist son, Harry. And they all enjoy spending time in the forest and cozying up by the cottage fire while the war rages on, like at a safe distance. But everything comes crashing down one day when Flora goes missing, and all signs point to her having fallen into the Thames River. Hazel is haunted by guilt about losing her sister, but she like never quite gives up hope that Flora is still alive out there. So flash forward into 1960 when Hazel is working at her job at a special collector's bookstore, and she comes across a highly valuable hand-illustrated copy of this brand new fantasy novel out of America. And she's shocked to discover that it's set in Whisperwood, which is the secret fantasy world that she made up to tell calming stories to her little sister during the war. Even starts out like with the exact same wording that she used to use when she told these stories. So how did this author find out about these stories that no one else knew about? Could they know something about her sister's fate? Could that author even be her sister Flora? Well, Hazel has to get over her guilt about what happened and confront her past and stop putting off her future if she is going to find the answers that she seeks. And I will say that although the war, like World War II, is a backdrop to part of this book, I wouldn't call it exactly a World War II book. So if you're a little tired of that genre, which I know a lot of people are, don't let it put you off of this one. If you like fairy tales or mysteries or historical fiction or light romance, or a mixture of any of those, then I think that you'll love this enchanting book that is going to keep you guessing until the end. Okay, so my next pick is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And this book follows two friends, Sam and Sadie, who first meet when they're kids at a hospital where Sadie's sister is receiving cancer treatment and Sam is recovering from a car accident. And they bond over playing video games in the hospital game room and eventually become best friends. But they have a falling out when Sam finds out that Sadie has been counting all of her visits with him as volunteer hours towards her bat mitzvah. But they reconnect years later when they're both attending college in Boston. And Sam is super impressed by this high concept video game that Sadie has designed called Solution. In the game, the player is like building a machine. And the game asks you questions, whether you want to, well, the game asks you whether you want to know certain things about what is going on. And if you don't ask, well, if you ask the questions and you find out what is going on, you slowly begin to understand that you are building a machine for the Nazis. And you can start to subvert the process to kind of challenge them, but you'll lose points, right? If you don't ask the questions and you just keep playing and you ignore like what this sort of secret is, you will rack up points, but you will only learn your participation in the Nazi regime at the end when the damage is all done. And Sam and actually his roommate too, and everyone who plays this game is just floored by like what like a like I don't know, an original concept it is. So Sam and Sadie are both at kind of a turning point in their lives. And so Sam convinces her to drop everything and design a game with him. And it turns out to be super successful. And it has these rippling effects on their lives and their relationships. And the book follows their friendship and their career over the years. And it really asks the reader to consider the differences between and the pros and cons of romantic and platonic love. It's an exploration of the deep importance of friendship in our lives, as well as the importance of play and creativity in getting us through, the inevitable grief and stress and disappointments that we all experience. And Sam and Sadie definitely go through a hell of a lot in this book. If you're a gamer, you will love the references to classic games as well as the descriptions of the inventive immersive games that Sam and Sadie create. But if, like me, you aren't a gamer, there is still so much beauty and heart and depth to appreciate in this book. So you may think that this is a book about video games and it's not for you, but it really is so much more than that. It's ultimately a book about love, and we all experience that. So check this one out. Okay. So my third pick is The English Understand Wool by Helen DeWitt. This tiny book is less than 70 pages, but it has kept me thinking about it since I read it last year. It's kind of hard to describe without giving too much of the plot away, but the book isn't really about plot. It's more of a character study and a reflection on class and publishing trends and what it means to write your own story, both literally and figuratively. So, the narrator, Marguerite, is an extremely wealthy French, English, Moroccan 17-year-old, and she's raised by her mother to avoid mauvais temps at all costs. Mauvais temps is this French phrase that roughly translates to bad taste, but the book is full of words that can't exactly be translated, and that's sort of part of the point of the book. So Marguerite lives in this world of strict social protocols, exacting aesthetic standards, and deep cultural practices. And that's part of where the title of the book comes from, because Marguerite's mother has, for example, taught her to patronize ancestral weavers of tweed in the Outer Hebrides, but then have the cloth made up into clothing in London because, quote, the English understand wool. Her carefully cultivated world is turned upside down when she learns that her mother has betrayed her, and she is thrust into a world where taste is trumped by pure profit seeking. Marguerite is not exactly the most sympathetic main character that you've ever read, and she reminds me a lot of Eleanor Oliphant, if you've read that book, in that much of this book's humor comes from her biting, dry commentary on the behavior of others without really seeing how those judgments reflect on herself. However, when you get to the main event of the story, which I won't spoil, you will be rooting for her as she turns the tables on her adversaries and fights for the ability to tell her own story and control her own future. I know that doesn't really tell you a lot about what the book is about, but it's such a short book with such complex themes that I really think it's best if you just take an hour or so and read it yourself. Okay. My next book is The Book Eaters by Sunya Dean. And this is my third book about books picked tonight, I know, but this one has a very original concept. So the main character, Devin, is part of a species of people that look human, but that feed on books. They have a clan-like social structure that they call the family, that has very strict gender and social hierarchies. And it's made worse by the fact that they seem to be slowly becoming infertile over the years. Therefore, the women are forced into arranged marriages and then separated from their babies after they're weaned onto books. So the main character, Devin, when her second baby, however, turns out to be a mind eater instead of a book eater. So this is someone who feeds on human minds instead of on books. And this is a really unfortunate and dangerous recessive trait that runs in their species. And usually the book eaters keep the mind eaters under control using this drug that has been developed by one of the families. But that family has recently had something of an internal civil war and is therefore no longer producing the drug and is hard to find. They've kind of dispersed. So Devin flees with her son and goes undercover to try to find them and get the drug and hopefully the secret recipe so that she can live in peace with her son outside of the control of the family. This book is like quite the page turner with villains that are really frightening, but with motivations that are truly understandable because, you know, both they and Devin are living under the same biological and social pressures. It asks you to consider what influence the media we consume has on us and the people that we associate have on us, and also what we're willing to sacrifice to save those that we love. I definitely like this one or recommend this one if you like strong women characters. Like Devin is really, she's like a woman of steel. If you like gripping action and a magical world that's hidden right under our noses, and then of course, if you like books, you should try this one out. Okay, so my next pick is The Good Life, Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness by Dr. Robert J. Wallinger. Um, so I know some people love and this is nonfiction, by the way. So some people love and some people hate New Year's resolutions, you know, but as far as they go, being happier is a pretty good New Year's resolution. And this book gives really solid evidence-based advice on how to do that in a sustainable, lifelong way. It details lessons learned from the findings of the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which began in 1938 and has studied the original cohort of English students, of Harvard students and young men from disadvantaged backgrounds in Boston over the decades. And then it's then expanded to include their spouses and their descendants. In fact, it's had several, Dr. Wallinger is like, I think he says he's like the fifth or sixth lead study on this, lead doctor on the study. So it was really unique at the time because its intent was to focus on wellness, like what makes people happy and healthy as opposed to illness and disorder. And it turns out that when you control for things like gender and race and education and income, which of course do have effects on people's happiness and their well-being and their outcomes, when you control for all that, the overall key to lifelong well-being is actually just good relationships. And this not only means strong family connections and strong friendships, but also like looser connections, like being in a book group or seeing the same cashier at your local cafe and being on a first name basis with your neighbors, and so on. So Waldinger also discusses other studies that have happened since that corroborate this claim. And I would say both the data and the personal stories from the Harvard study participants are really compelling and often moving. The book gives some strategies and advice on creating more social connections and increasing your own well-being. And of course, you know, you can start by joining a library book group or becoming a regular at your local library branch. So yeah, if you're looking for a little bit of, you know, self-improvement in the new year, I definitely would suggest this one. And then we're each going to talk about a forthcoming book, a book that isn't quite out yet. And my forthcoming pick is The American Daughters by Maurice Carlos Ruffin. Maurice Carlos Ruffin. It is coming out on February 27th. And this book is about a young Black woman named Adie, who was raised by her runaway slave mother until they were both sold to a wealthy New Orleans businessman when Adie's 10. A few years later, her mother dies, and so she's even more lost until she meets a free Black woman named Lenore who runs an integrated establishment in the French Quarter called the Mockingbird Inn. And Lenore opens up like a whole new world of freedom to Adie. As their friendship grows, Adie learns that the Mockingbird is actually a cover for a secret all-woman spy network called the Daughters that's working to subvert the Confederacy, and Lenore recruits her to join. Kirkus, in their review, has given this book a starred review, and they don't always give out those lightly. And they say about it that it's, quote, a high adventure, a revealing history, and a chronicle of one woman's self-realization. Ruffin also displays cunning imagination and caustic wit by interspersing his narrative with imagined transcripts from the past, present, and even the future. Black women as agents, literally, of their own liberation, who wouldn't be inspired, end quote. So yeah, I mean, especially a great pick for Black History Month coming up in February. It comes out at the end of that month, so hop on the hold list for it. And I'm going to say this, I could be wrong, but my librarian spidey sense is telling me that Civil War historical fiction is starting to trend. And so if you or your book group are getting a bit tired of World War II fiction, but you still want like something with high stakes and like big historical turning points in US history, and then maybe try something about the Civil War, like this book. I also I personally really love things like fictional footnotes and transcripts and memos and stuff that make it seem as if the novel is a real artifact. So I'm pretty excited about this one. It is already in our library catalog, so you can hop on the hold list if you'd like. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Harry. So take it away, Harry.
Thanks, Sarah. So when Sarah told us about the winter picks, I literally gave you winter picks. My first book, Wanderlust, is a nonfiction biography of Peter Freuchen, who lived from 1886 to 1957. At the age of 20, he went to northern Greenland with a scientific expedition and lived with the Inuit people. And in fact, he liked it so much, he went to an even more remote part of Greenland and married an Inuit woman, had 2 children with her. He had all kinds of adventures, and it's very interesting to see how he inserted himself into that life. However, as befits the title, Wanderlust, even though he had a wife and 2 children, he just could not sit still. So he was also involved in the Danish underground during World War II, escaped from the Nazis, and worked in Hollywood. The book is so unbelievable, and yet it is meticulously researched and got rave reviews in the New York Times as well as by professional publications. I really enjoyed it, and I think that if you want a wild adventure book, you will enjoy it. That is Peter on the cover in his fur coat. My next book is City Under One Roof. Now, since I lead a mystery and thriller book discussion, of course, you're going to have a lot of mysteries and thrillers, but they're going to be all set in the winter. So City Under One Roof is written by a woman who's a screenwriter in Hollywood, raised in Honolulu, but born in Missouri. This book is about a stranded female detective from Anchorage who has to solve a murder in a snowed-in, remote Alaska town that consists of one high-rise condo. Everyone in the town lives in this condo, and the only way to access the condo is via an underground tunnel. But there's a snowstorm, and they are all snowed in. One of the kids in the area finds 2 body parts, and so this Anchorage detective who is on leave has to hook up with local law enforcement and try to figure out where this came from. Where did this murder come from? Of course, everybody has secrets in this high rise, and we have quirky characters, multiple points of view. The book got rave reviews. It's very atmospheric. You can feel like you're in the chill of Alaska when you read it. The doom is closing in, but it's a classic. It's not a locked room mystery. It's a locked town mystery. So if you like Agatha Christie, you will enjoy this book. My next book is Dead by Dawn by Paul Dwaron. Paul, if you like C.J. Box, which I know a lot of people do, or Alan Eskins, you will like Paul Dwaron. These books are set in Maine, but this is not the Maine of tourists. This is the Maine of meth labs, criminals, and poverty. In this book, this is number 12 in the series, but you can read it as a standalone. Mike Bowditch, who is our main game warden, is ambushed on a dark winter road, and his Jeep is forced into a frozen river. So he has to survive being frozen in this river and trying to figure out, why is someone trying to kill him? He's investigating a cold case regarding a wealthy professor who was declared drowned by suicide on a lake. But he had a companion, and that companion was a survivalist. Was that person the murderer or somebody else? Well, you can imagine that some people don't want our game warden to investigate this death. So we have fast pace, high tension, and gritty action in this book. As I said, if you like C.J. Box or even S.A. Cosby, you're going to have gritty action, fast pace, and very great descriptions of Maine. So I highly enjoy this series. My next book, okay, I'm stepping back from the mysteries and thrillers. The Last Animal is about a single mother and her two teen daughters who go to Siberia with biologists and discover a perfectly preserved 4,000-year-old baby mammoth. Now, mother and daughters are grieving the loss of the mother's husband and the daughter's father. So they're trying to reconnect. The book is about family, loss, reconciliation, but also about the challenges of women in science. And by the way, what happens to Pearl, the baby mammoth? Now you can imagine that something happens to Pearl. Do they actually bring Pearl back to life? And if so, what happens to Pearl? I'm not going to spoil it, but it is a really well-written book. I think you'd enjoy it if you like books about families and reconciliation. My next book, I'm going back to the mysteries, but this is a cozy mystery, A Christmas Candy Killing. This is number 1 in the Killer Chocolate Mysteries series. We have identical twins, Alex and Hannah, who own the Murder and Mayhem mystery bookshop that sells poison-themed chocolates in a remote Montana village on a lake. And apparently, I saw on Amazon that a woman who lived in that area of Montana says it's very accurate. So I've never been to Montana, but it's nice to know that the setting is accurate. The twins' 70-year-old neighbor, Jane, tells them that someone from a true crime show has come to live in their town. When Alex goes over to Jane's house to watch the true crime show on TV, Jane is found dead with a box of the poisoned chocolates next to her. And in fact, these are really poisoned chocolates that killed poor Jane. So Alex is now a suspect in Jane's murder. Jane left behind a journal. Is that going to identify the murderer? It's a debut novel. I would say it's a cut above a lot of cozy books because there is a legitimate mystery here, and we have quirky locals, but of course there are multiple chocolate recipes at the end of the book. Can't have a cozy without recipes. So, and I heard from another mystery group book leader, former mystery group leader who works for the library, that she loved this book. So that's another endorsement. My next book is Bad River by Mark Cameron. I have to say, I really enjoy this series. So if you like Jack Reacher on Ice, this series is for you. Mark Cameron is a retired federal marshal, in fact, chief federal marshal for Alaska. What do federal marshals do? They track down federal fugitives. They protect dignitaries like judges and politicians. So that's the job that he had as the chief federal marshal for Alaska. And he writes this series based on his time in Alaska. He still lives there. Now, this particular book is number 6 in the series. You can read it as a standalone. If you read from the start, the first one is called Open Carry. Now, in this book, which is coming out in July, Arliss Cutter is trying to figure out how his brother died. His brother was an engineer working up in Alaska on a project, and his brother died under suspicious circumstances. So in the previous books, Arliss has been trying to figure out what happened. Was his brother murdered? Did his brother uncover some conspiracy up there? Arliss also has a female deputy marshal, Lola Tiakariki, who is from Polynesia, and she is seriously a bad character. Not bad in a bad way, but I mean, she doesn't brook any nonsense. And of course, Arliss, like Jack Reacher, never lets any kind of bullying pass him by. So there's a lot of action in the book. Very short chapters, exciting, great scenery. So if you like Jane Harper, Jack Reacher books, C.J. Box, Alan Eskins, this series is for you. It just keeps getting better every book, I would say. I'm going to turn it over to Helena.
Hi. Thank you, Perry. Well, most of the books on my list deal with unique families, life and death situations, loyalty, betrayal, love and hate, adoption, and homelessness, and the twists and turns of relationships. My first book, Sister Soldier, The Coldest Winter Ever, was written 25 years ago in 1999, but it is still a powerful, courageous story that impacts the lives of the urban community. Reading this book was like a thrilling roller coaster ride, unexpected and never disappointing. And I love roller coaster rides, so I guess you would have to like roller coaster rides too. The story is a fictionalized version of so many women raised in the ghetto, exposed to drugs, drug dealers, and drug wars. Sister Soldier wrote her version of The Godfather, but with women as the lead characters. While Winter thinks only of herself and what she can do individually to survive, Soldier thinks of the Black community as a whole and what she can do to bring unity to her people. And this way, the author makes a larger commentary about the nature of poverty and the life in the projects. My next book is A Little Life by Hanya Yan Nigahara. I had to do that phonetically. This book follows 4 friends through college and 3 decades of their lives. Jude, Malcolm, Willem, and JB. They relocated to New York to continue their journeys into adulthood. Jude is the focus of the other's existence. He is frail with a horrific trauma in his past, but is also the brightest of the 4 men. Jude tries to keep his terrible childhood a secret. He cuts himself and contemplates suicide. There's Willem, the handsome, kind-hearted actor who is waiting tables downtown. Malcolm, a light-skinned African-American architect from a wealthy background. And the self-centered, occasional drug-using artist of Haitian ancestry. This is a novel that values everyday life of 4 classmates that shared decades of love, loss, addiction, and pain, secrets, and relationships. You'll think about these characters long after the final page of this powerful story. A Little Life is a heart-pounding page turner. This book was my niece, who is 22, was reading this book. And so usually with, family, I like to read a lot. So I was like, let me start reading this book. And this, book is, traumatizing, but I can understand how so many people get, sucked into it. And they, even though it is horrific, you just can't let it go. So this book came out in 2015, but is still, very popular. There's always a waiting list to get this book. And when I heard that they were making a movie of it, I was like, I'm just wondering how they're just going to do it. But you can go online and see bits of a play that has been going on, and I guess look forward to when they get to the movie version. All right, the next title is The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. Well, in this story, a skeleton was unearthed in a small town of Chicken Hill, Pennsylvania in 1972. It tells the vibrant story of a working class neighborhood of Jewish, African American, and European immigrant families. Moshe owns the town's first integrated dance hall and theater with his wife, Shauna, a beautiful woman driven by her deep Jewish faith. She also runs the Heaven and Earth grocery store. Nate and Addie are friends of Moshe and Shonda, and they are African American, and they ask her to help really to hide their nephew, who certain individuals was trying to have him sent to an asylum. He had lost, he was a normal kid, but he lost his hearing in an accident. And he sees something that he shouldn't have seen. So the local doctor and head KKK leader wants to silence him and put him away. And so he does send him to this asylum, but the community rallies together to get him out and to make sure he doesn't spend the rest of his life there. And through this, the community looks out for each other, and ultimately justice is received, which leads to the dead body discovered years later. Let's just say the script gets flipped that brings the community together to exact justice. The next title is The Wager by David Grann. This book is a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder. A breathtaking novel on a barren island off the Chilean coast of, I was going to practice this, Patagonia in 1741. And this tale of shipwreck, survival, and savagery, it resulted in a court-martial that revealed a shocking truth. Drawing on several firsthand accounts, logbooks, correspondence, diaries, court-martial testimony, and government documents, Grann mounts a chilling narrative of a grim maritime tragedy and its dramatic aftermath. Life on board an 18th century ship was perilous. Threats included wild weather, enemy fire, scurvy, typhus, insurrection, and even mutiny. What this story really shows is how nations also shape and manipulate and edit their stories to serve their own self-interest. The Wager is a brisk, absorbing history, well-researched, compelling, and concise. A deeply candid and suspenseful book. It is a thrilling, true crime story that explores the mysterious disappearance of a man in the Arctic. It delves into history of exploration and the lengths people will go to uncover the truth. This was a ship that was sent out to try to capture some of is a British ship trying to capture some Spanish goods. And the Wager had about 300 men on it, but they crash and get, lost, and they're, trying to find their way, back to civilization. And through Grain's digging, he finds out, they're stranded for a couple of years, but ultimately several of the men survive this and make it, back home, and then ultimately find out that they might still be killed for mutiny. So if you like history, it's really an excellent book to read. My next book, The Lonely Hearts Book Club by Lucy Gilmore. This book is a nod to all people who are a little lonely, regretful, and introverted. Reading this book is a little like therapy, enlightening, hopeful, and full of possibilities. The librarian Sloane is engaged to a chiropractor, Brett. Her parents are constantly fighting with each other. At work, Sloane enters a friendship with Arthur, a grumpy old patron. She breaks the library policy and tracks Arthur down when he's absent from the library for several days. Sloane pushes her way into Arthur's home, and his neighbor, Massey, part-time nurse, Matteo, and grandson Greg soon follow. They form an unlikely friendship. Sloane is grieving her sister and engaged to a man she doesn't love. Telephone psychic Macy struggles to connect with her teenage daughter. Charming but listless, Matteo can't commit to a job or his boyfriend. And Greg's fulfilling his mother's dying wish of reconciling with his estranged grandfather. Drawn together by Arthur's illness, the Lonely Hearts Book Club beautifully explores the lessons we learn from each other if we pay attention. And my final book selection is new and is scheduled to be out the end of this month. And it's Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame by Olivia Ford. The main character, Jennifer Gwynn, 77, has lived a quiet life with her sweet, supportive husband, Bernard, to whom she's been married nearly 60 years. Without telling Bernard, she applies to be a contestant on a popular competition show. To her surprise, Jenny is chosen for the show. She discovers that the love and support of friends and family helps her find self-confidence to compete and the courage to reveal her first secret to her husband. Fans of cooking competitions will find this feel-good story delectable. Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame is a delightful story full of warmth, kindness, and cake. Readers will be inspired and moved by Mrs. Quinn's charming coming-of-age tale. Well, thank you for listening to my selection. And next is I'm looking. Jessica,
All right, thanks, Helena.
you're welcome.
And thanks to all three of you. My reading list for the winter is all set now. The first book that I would like to talk about tonight is Secret History by Donna Tartt. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this book first is because I think it has maybe the greatest first sentence of all time, and that is, "The snow in the mountains was melting, and Bunny had been dead for several weeks before we came to understand the gravity of our situation." This story centers around a tight-knit group of friends who are collectively under the wing of an enigmatic classics professor at a New England liberal arts college. The narrator is new to the clique and notices some strange behaviors among the group that make him suspect there is something dark happening beneath the surface. Tensions between the group escalate until the death mentioned at the beginning occurs, and the rest of the book follows the group as they deal with the repercussions of that event. This book is part thriller, part literary fiction, part dark academia, and it'll hook fans of any of those genres. The structure of this book is interesting because we find out about a character's death in the very first sentence, but then it still keeps you on the edge of your seat waiting to find out how it happened and what will happen next. I think the themes of this book will resonate with anyone who has ever longed to be part of a particular group, only to find that nothing is perfect, and sometimes the people who seem perfect have the most to hide. I think this is a perfect winter read, first because it takes place in Vermont and the descriptions of winter weather are so well written. There's kind of a break in the action where the main character is living alone in an unheated warehouse through a brutal winter, and it produced such vivid imagery that I can still kind of picture it in my mind even years after reading the book. I also love becoming immersed in a long, interesting, and well-written book in winter, and I think this would be an incredible book to curl up with on a cold day. And my next pick is How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis. January is a time when I think a lot of us are trying to form and maintain good habits, and it's also a time when we might be spending more time at home than normal. For me, that combination sometimes means that I can be really hard on myself about my ability or inability to keep up with housework and care tasks like laundry. My husband read this book last January and told me he thought that I would love it, and it's hard to overstate how much it's helped me. This book contains practical and achievable tips and habits that can help you keep your house in a manageable condition. But what really felt life-altering about it to me was that it helped me reframe the way I feel about housework and care tasks altogether. So kind of a shift in my thinking from a source of shame and something that I feel like I'm failing at to something that can really be an act of love, both for my family and for myself. The author is a parent, and there are tips specifically for parents, but the book as a whole has something for everyone. I also really appreciated that she specifically acknowledges the struggle of keeping up with chores when you're neurodivergent or struggling with mental health. The author Casey Davis also has a podcast called Struggle Care, and her description of it is, "When everyday care tasks are a struggle, this is no judgment, just practical advice to make simple care tasks and survival skills easier to manage. Struggle Care is about learning how to accomplish care tasks and being kind to yourself when you have functional barriers." It's a gentle but extremely helpful book, like if Marie Kondo would give you a hug and tell you that actually you're already doing a great job. My third pick is Lone Women by Victor LaValle. And this book, like The Secret History, hooked me right from the beginning. It opens with a woman burning down her house and leaving everything behind in the middle of the night, except for an impossibly heavy trunk that must remain locked. This book takes place in 1915, and the main character, Adelaide, is a Black farmer who leaves her life in California behind and sets out on her own as a homesteader in Montana. The author, Victor LaValle, has a tradition of buying local history books when he's in a new place to do a reading. He did a reading at University of Montana in Missoula and bought a book on their campus called Montana Woman Homesteaders, A Field of One's Own. And he learned in that book that homesteading was actually one of the rare inclusive spaces during this time period, in that it was accessible to people regardless of race or gender. So having a single Black woman owning land and homesteading on that land could have been possible. And I think that this makes it a fascinating time period and a really interesting backdrop for a novel. It's an interesting blend of genres because there's historical fiction, there's Western, but it's also horror. So as the book goes on, we kind of learn more about Adelaide's secrets, and it takes a turn into more of a horror novel. So with this combination of genres, it kind of feels like a Little House on the Prairie meets Jordan Peele, in a story that builds suspense as it goes until it comes together in an exciting and satisfying ending. My next pick is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. In this novel, Cambridge professor Emily Wilde goes on a journey to a village in northern Scandinavia to gather information about the Hidden Ones, an elusive group of fairies who have been conflicting more and more with the mortals who live nearby. Along with her dog Shadow, and I love a book with a good animal sidekick, so this was a big plus for me here. She sets out to complete field work for her encyclopedia that she's working on when she is unexpectedly joined by Wendell, her fellow professor and academic rival. As they begrudgingly work together, they begin to realize that their differences might actually provide an important balance for both of them in their work and for each other, and their relationship begins to evolve. The relationship between the Fae and the mortals in this book can be complicated and sometimes dark, but overall, this is a cozy fantasy with a hopeful tone. I liked that the main characters were complicated, but ultimately likable, and the banter and interactions between them give the book a lighthearted tone. It's a very accessible fantasy that would appeal both to people who read a lot in the genre and readers like me who can be intimidated by epic wars, but enjoy some magic mixed in with their stories. It would also be a great read for readers who enjoy folklore and mythology. To me, this book captures the magical side of winter, where sometimes in the snow, the world feels just a little bit different than before, like there could be something magical hidden just out of sight. It's also a great winter read because it's heartwarming and there's a sweet romantic plotline, although that isn't the focus of the story. This is the first book in an ongoing series, and the second book, Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands, just came out on January 9th. So if you read this book and you get hooked on the story, there's more ready for you. My next pick is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. And I need to make a confession here that I had kind of a difficult time choosing books for this program because I wanted to talk about kind of a variety of books. And I realized that the winter books that I gravitate towards are about bad things happening to people in snowstorms. So I thought it was fitting to close out my current picks with a book that's firmly in my winter wheelhouse, Rock, Paper, Scissors. I love thrillers set in snowstorms. There's something about the unpredictability of natural events and our relative helplessness in the face of an event like a blizzard that sets a great backdrop for a thriller. I've read a lot of books that fit this description, but ultimately I wanted to talk about Rock, Paper, Scissors because I love the setting in a remote area of Scotland and because this book is so unpredictable. The main character, Amelia, wins a weekend away at a historic chapel in the Scottish Highlands. She travels there with her husband, Adam, hoping that the getaway will help with the rocky relationship that they have had lately. When they arrive, the secluded location surprises them and things seem to be a little off at the house. Then a blizzard hits, tensions escalate, and they are faced with the truth about their relationship and each other. It's a twisty thriller with an unreliable narrator, perfect for people who like relationship dramas where nothing is what it seems to be on the surface. Right, and the forthcoming book that I would like to talk about is The Mayor of Maxwell Street by Avery Cunningham. This historical fiction novel comes out next week on January 30th, and as of this morning, you can request a physical copy from our library catalog, but it's not yet listed on Libby. This book is set in Prohibition era Chicago, and it follows 20-year-old debutante Nellie Sawyer, the daughter of a Kentucky horse breeder who is thought to be the wealthiest Black man in America. Nellie has ambitions beyond the society life and works undercover as an investigative journalist, sharing the achievements and tribulations of everyday Black people living in the shadow of Jim Crow. When a new assignment takes her into an organized crime syndicate led by the mayor of Maxwell Street, she must work together with an unlikely ally to expose the mayor and to bring about change in a corrupted city. This is Avery Cunningham's first book, and I always like to support debut authors. Mayor of Maxwell Street is described as an epic love story, a riveting historical drama, and a brilliant exploration of Black society and perseverance when the 20s first began to roar. And that wraps up my picks. So thanks everyone for listening. It's been fun talking about books with you, and I'll pass it back to Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. Actually, thank you to all of you for presenting tonight. And thank you for all of you for coming. We will have a little Q&A session in just a minute. So if you do have questions for us, feel free to put those in the chat and we'll answer those in just a second. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about a few different library services and programs that you might be interested in. So you got a lot of great recommendations tonight. I did too. But if you want more, you should try out our personalized reading service. This is a form you can fill out on your website where you tell us what you like or what you don't like. And in a week or less, we will send you a list of 5 titles that we have created just for you. So you can find it, like I said, on our website under the Books, eMedia, and More tab. And then, yeah, I want to invite you to come to a couple of upcoming programs, because if you like this program, you might like one of these. So next month, as you know, February is Black History Month, and we have a virtual program that's part of our slate of Black History Month programs called Writing Contemporary Speculative Fiction. So if you're a reader, you might be a writer too. And this program is being hosted by a local science fiction author. He uses local St. Louis history as like an inspiration for the seed for his fantasy and science fiction work. So, and he'll sort of teach you how to do that too. And then as a bonus, even if you aren't a writer, I'm going to be making a handout with some African-American speculative fiction on it. So some sci-fi and fantasy by Black authors. Our staff member who's hosting this program asked me to make that. So if you sign up for this program, you will get that handout. And then we have another webinar style book talk program like this one coming up in March that's going to be just nonfiction. So if you love nonfiction, definitely sign up for this one. It's going to be called Noteworthy Nonfiction Reads. And I'm pretty excited about that one. I almost always have a fiction and a nonfiction going on all the time. So, so definitely keep an eye out for that one. And yeah, it's time for some questions. So I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can have all of our presenters turn their cameras back on. And let's see if we have any questions. Mostly it's just people saying thank you and that they loved some of our picks, including Rock, Paper, Scissors. Someone said that they loved that one. Another person who we know, hello, said that they can't wait to read Mayor of Maxwell Street. So yeah, so and a couple of other thank yous. But if you do have a question for us, go ahead and put that into the chat. And yeah, I'll kind of get us warmed up with a question of, actually all 3 of you run book clubs. Are your book clubs reading anything good this month?
We are, so I'm at Merrimack Valley, and I run a book club that's the Tuesday night book discussion group, because it meets on a Tuesday night. And we read kind of a variety of fiction and nonfiction, but this month we're reading Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I'm not too far into it yet. It's a very long book, but it's really good so far. It's a historical fiction set in Appalachia. I love Barbara Kingsolver, so I'm really excited to see how our discussion goes.
I have 3 different book discussion groups, and book journeys is usually a variety: history, fiction, fantasy, you know, whatever. It's just a variety. And that book we're reading for next month is The Measure by Nikki Erlich. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's I read it, I guess, at least a year ago, but it is very interesting and very thought-provoking. And for the African-American experience, it's a classic, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. And the book to film is Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. And I had read the book before, but there's a television series that they put out. I believe it's like maybe 6 episodes, but you know, you can go online and watch the whole thing. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know it existed until my sister told me about it. And so every, I think it was Friday night, I was going to her house to watch the series. So I think it'd be an interesting discussion.
Thanks. You reading anything good in either of your two groups, Harry?
I can't even think of what the mystery group is reading. I read so many thrillers outside because I work on those PRLs. My evening group really liked Foster by Claire Keegan, which is a very short but powerful book about a girl who is sent in Ireland to go live with some relatives who don't have a child. And that was a terrific book. And then we just finished Independence by Chitra Divakaruni, which is about three sisters who are growing up in India at the time when it separated from Pakistan, when the two countries were separated by the British. And they really liked that book. Has coming of age and family drama. So those are two books that stand out in my mind.
Yeah, cool. I don't see any questions. I see some more comments, including someone who has used our personalized reading service and they really liked it. So if you haven't, you should too. I will say it was included as part of the winter reading challenge. So Harry and I, and especially Harry, we've done, I think we've done like 150 of them since the beginning of December. It's crazy. We do a lot of them. But we like them. So definitely do a personalized reading list. But since we don't have any other questions, I'll just plug my book group too. Mine is a no required book group. So if you don't like being told what to read, you can join my book group. It's called Mocktails. It's a virtual book group, meets on the second Monday of the month, and we have a theme. And I and everyone in the group reads a book on the theme, and we all sort of talk about our books, and I demo a mocktail that usually is either related to the theme or seasonal, in some way. So it's a very fun time. I don't like enforce the theme. So like if you can still come, even if you didn't read a book on the theme. And even if you didn't finish a book, you can just talk about what you read. It's fun. Yeah, someone in the chat is in my group and she says she really likes it. So if we're the most laid back book club that you have out there, it's just like hanging out with friends talking about books. So what did I read last month? Oh, well, last month we did our favorite book of 2023. So I talked about one of those books. But yeah. Yeah, I see a few of my Mocktails members are in the chat saying that they come. So that's my book club. Yeah, anyone else have any questions? Well, I don't see any questions and we're just about to reach 8 o'clock. So I think we will go ahead and end it there. We are recording tonight's presentation, so it will be available on our YouTube channel within 3 business days. And when that's ready, I will send out a follow-up email with a link to the YouTube recording, as well as the handout and any other links of some things that we talked about tonight. So thank you to all of you out there for joining us tonight for this program. Thank you, Harry, and a special thank you to Jessica and Helena for joining us from the branches tonight. We know that a lot of people love seeing, their branch staff present with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. I
Thanks
enjoyed
for
these.
having us. It's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
I hope it's always fun, like something different for you.
Yeah, great picks.
Yeah, definitely good picks. I've already put some of your stuff on my list. I have to say, I think I'm gonna read the How to Keep House While Drowning. I've been an on again, off again follower of the Fly Lady method for like decades. So that I don't know, that kind of thing is like right up my alley. So
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I hope you like it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but I'm a procrastinator, so yeah.
all the better. All right. Well, I see lots of thank yous in the chat, but no other questions. So we will end it there. So good night, everyone. Stay safe and warm, and we hope to see you at another virtual program soon. Good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.